call, please.
Carlson. Here. Hurtak. Here. Clendenin.
Here.
Henderson.
Present.
Vieira. Miranda. Here. And Maniscalco.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
Item number 53. And Mr. Shelby, do we need public comment on 53 or no?
No.
Okay.
You've taken a public comment for everything today. There are no public hearings.
Okay, just checking. Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Is the first reading of an ordinance amending City of Tampa's Code of Ordinances to prohibit smoking and vaping in city parks. We have a short presentation on this item. If they could pull up the PowerPoint. I'll just cover quickly the legal basis, and then I'll hand it over to Director Washington to complete the presentation. So the city's legal authority to prohibit smoking and vaping in its parks is derived from section 386.209 Florida statutes. The statute specifically carves out an exception preventing municipalities from regulating the smoking of unfiltered cigars. So that exception has been incorporated into the proposed ordinance. If adopted, the proposed ordinance would amend Chapter 16, Article 3, Section 16-47 of the city's Code of Ordinances to prohibit smoking of any lighted tobacco product except unfiltered cigars and vaping of any substance in city parks. A violation of Section 16-47 would be a civil offense, and the penalty would be a civil citation that carries with it a fine as provided in Section 23.5-5 Subpart A of City Code. With that, I'll turn the presentation over to Director Washington. After he concludes the presentation, I, Director Washington, and also Tony Milke, Director of Parks and Recreation, will be present and available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Washington.
All right,
Go ahead.
Thank you. And good afternoon, City Council. Larry Washington, Director of Solid Waste Department. Just FYI, I'm currently at Dr. Carter Woodson's elementary school right now. That's why you see the background. So if there's any noise from the kids, I was working with the teachers at Great American Teaching. So I got caught up with the children and I couldn't leave as soon as I needed to. So, however, I know that you're probably wondering why a solid waste director is presenting on an ordinance change for Parks and Rec. I'll be able to unpack that as the presentation unfolds. So I cannot see the slides. Can we go back to the slides as well? I'll make sure those are up. Just let me know when you're here if you can see them. And McLean, would you mind working the PowerPoint for me?
Yes.
It says no signal.
Figure that out. Let me see.
Yep.
Yeah, if we can blow it up on our screen, it's small. If we could just make it bigger.
Okay.
There we go. Go ahead.
Mr.
Okay.
Washington, can you see that?
Perfect. Yep, it's up
Yep.
on my end. So as you can see, we do not stand alone in what we're trying to do here. So these are some of the municipalities that have already moved forward in enacting similar ordinance changes for the betterment of their communities. So we see Clearwater, of course, St. Pete, Treasure Island, City of Sarasota, etc. So sorry. All right, next slide, please. And now we just dropped in our logo as well. So we are hoping to add our name to the list moving forward. So usually we will compile all of these. These are facts that we want to present to the city council. However, they really needed to stand out, but due to the time frame that we probably have right now, I'll go over them quickly. So in the bottom left corner, you can see where the source is. And dead center, you can see exactly what we want to put emphasis on. So cigarette butts are the most littered item in the United States. In addition, cigarette litter is present at every Tampa cleanup. And we know that by the green team. 76% of the cigarettes smoked in public are littered. Moving forward. Cigarette filters are made of plastic and do not biodegrade. So that is one of the reasons why we need to get them off of our parks and our beaches. Next slide. And an estimated 4 billion microplastics exist in Tampa Bay as of now. Next slide. Over 450 cigarettes collected within 1 mile at a single cleanup location, and over 3,200 cigarettes were collected in one cleanup. And that was done and conducted by our green team. As you can see here, the green team is picking up over 200 cigarettes an hour. And of course, secondhand smoke, whether generated by smoking or vaping, is a significant health risk as well. Next slide. So we want to focus on that and just show you a quick and all the references as well, to show that this was studied to ad nauseum. And despite the existing litter ordinance, these items are still being littered. And they're being littered at an alarming rate, showcasing the need for additional steps to be taken. Moving forward, the proposed ordinance aligns with the city of Tampa stance against the use of tobacco products. Next slide. And how we got involved. So we have and this research essentially presented here was in part through the EPA Trash-Free Waterway Grant, which is a $500,000 grant awarded to reduce the amount of trash in the Tampa Bay waterways. If passed, the ordinance will be accompanied with a portion of the grant for outreach and awareness. So that's roughly $80,000 for outreach and awareness. And this was not done, well, to really unpack that as well. So we have $30,000 budgeted for a year for our recycling team to promote and reach out to those, the people in the city of Tampa. And that's almost threefold. So we'll be able to push off this information and a very consistent basis. And that's going to be, of course, social media, which is free, and so park benches, and really some targeted areas that Tony Mulkey and team have already identified. And this was not done by ourselves as well. So we've had the pleasure of working with DPD, which team with sustainability and resilience, the Parks and Rec team, of course, and the legal department. So this all ties into the mayor's initiative of Keep It Clean as well. So that is my presentation, and that concludes it. Do you have any questions?
Councilmember Hurtak, you had questions?
I appreciated the presentation, and I completely agree with it. Littering of cigarette butts is a terrible, terrible thing. But that is not what this ordinance is saying. This ordinance is saying if you smoke in a park, we're going to fine you $75. It's not dropping a cigarette butt, it's smoking at all. So if this was a ordinance for littering cigarette butts and me or the city charging you $75 per, absolutely. But just smoking in a park, this does not match the presentation. So I cannot support anything that gives a civil citation to someone for simply smoking in a park. It's illegal, we shouldn't do it, but there's a million things that are illegal that we don't attach fines to, and I just think it's a bad precedent. Again, if you want to go ahead and change this ordinance to be if you litter, and when I asked about this earlier, folks said, well, it's really hard to prove that. Well, 3,200 butts in Al Barnes Parks tells me it's not actually that hard to prove it. I mean, that's a lot. So you can watch people drop a cigarette butt. But I can't support something that's simply going to add more people into the system for smoking.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much. And I have sympathy with Councilwoman Hurtak's sentiments, which is in question, by the way, because somebody had mentioned something on Tallahassee, is this a mandate that do we have to implement this?
No.
Okay, no, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, and I appreciate the presentation. If this was tailored to just littering, obviously, but to start doing citations on people for smoking in a park, it's going to lead to just more contacts with the criminal justice system, where I see the benefit of it. Obviously, I've never smoked in my life, right? Every time I smell a cigarette, that reminds me of my father. All I need is a Budweiser and a cigarette, and it's my dad, God rest his soul. The benefit of it doesn't outweigh the potential detriment, in my opinion. I at this time, I don't think this is something we should move forward on.
Councilman Miranda Henderson.
I have a different opinion. Not quite. When you prohibit smoking and vaping, you're trying to save somebody else's life. Your life may be gone because you're more likely to do it every day for years and years. My wife died of lung cancer. She never smoked. And I never forget when the surgeon told us, it ain't if she smoked or not, when we went up to her whole makeup, her father had 2 packs of cigarette a day and her mother 1. That's when there was no air conditioning in the houses. That's when all girls were inside, boys were outside playing. That's how it was at that time. And I never forgot that. This here, smoking and vaping is one thing if you want to do it in your own house. But when you start doing it in the public, you're putting others at risk. Not the butt, but when you walk by, if there's an event and there's 20 people smoking, you're in one of those events and you're not smoking, you're inhaling the same thing they are. And you don't do the same thing. I mean, you don't have to find a bottle of whiskey open to arrest somebody who's drunk. You just arrest them because they're drunk. In this case, I think you just arrest them because they're not only smoking, but they're dropping in city property. In this city right now, you can't smoke outside this building, am I correct? That was instituted under Buckhorn's administration, if I remember.
McLean Evans, Legal Department. City of Tampa properties are, have a no smoking policy, correct?
That's right. Was it under Buckhorn? Well, you weren't here, I'm sorry.
Unfortunately,
I'm
no,
just
I don't
testing
know
my
when
own
it was
memory.
adopted.
It's all right, thank you. And I relate this to the same thing. If you can't smoke on the city property, then you should be able to smoke in the city park. It's still a city property. It belongs to the taxpayers, not I. But thank you. That's just my opinion.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first I need to say shout out to Josh Balloon and Rashawn Grant, class of 2003, because they are the young men that got me to quit smoking, and I'm glad that I did. So I'm coming up on like 20 years of not smoking. Nevertheless, I like the idea of us not having, for parks to be a smoke-free zone for the sake of children and health and everything else. My concern is the manpower and the citation process of, you know, taking care of it that way. I don't know if it necessarily is going to be cost effective for us to do that. If someone's going to be assigned to double check to make sure, you know, people aren't smoking. I saw someone smoking outside of City Hall. We have a rule that is smoke free, but, you know, they copped a quick cigarette and kept it moving. I just don't know if it's cost effective for us to do that, and then it ends up being a situation where if we look at, well, where are we doing it? Or are we doing it at Al Barnes Park? Are we doing it over in Davis Island? Where are we, you know, giving these citations? And then it becomes a disparity problem where it may be heavily citations in minority communities and not other communities. You know, I mean, I think that we would create a different kind of problem. And it just wouldn't be cost effective. But I also believe that we should still advertise that our parks are smoke free and allow that process to just start taking place and say that it is subject to a fine. But manpowering it, I don't know if that part is necessary. Thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin.
You know, I kind of wondered what the motivation with this was, but it wasn't. I'm old enough to remember when they used to have to fly in airplanes and you know, have some people smoke in there and thinking you had a smoking and a non-smoking section, which was, there was no division, or going into restaurants and smoking and non-smoking, or riding in a vehicle with my elderly grandmother and aunts all chain smoking. One, actually, even at work in air traffic control, when I first started working, they allowed smoking, so you'd have air traffic controllers with one cigarette hanging up from their mouth, one in their fingers, and one in their ashtray, all burning at the same time. And I was never a smoker, and it was just, it was choking and killing. So, you know, Tampa's getting bigger, parks are getting more popular and more crowded. I agree. I'm glad Councilwoman Henderson mentioned the children. And I don't really see this as any different than what we've taken these sociological advances of banning smoking in airplanes and in restaurants and in workplaces, because it's also about the rights of the individuals that are not smoking, not to have it infringed upon them. I think the issue with enforcement is separate from the concept of this. You know, I understand that it has potential of having, and maybe have a subsequent conversation about penalties and whatnot, but I think that it's a separate issue from banning smoking in the parks, and I think I'm fully in support of banning smoking in the parks. And I think we should probably pass this, and if there's an issue with enforcement or resources, then we can deal with that later.
Councilmember Hurtak?
How about we just pass it without the penalty? I mean, because that's,
McLean Evans, Legal Department. It's council's pleasure if they would like changes, substantive changes, such as changing the penalties, and let me just
yeah, so
double check.
that-
We just
I
strike,
think
we just
we'd have
strike
to
the
start,
penalty.
and
I
because that's
move to-
references in the title, we would have to start over at
Okay.
first reading.
So so I make a motion to do the ordinance, taking out all penalties.
I would
Yeah,
just
but-
encourage council to consider general public policy. To adopt a rule that has no consequences is essentially useless. So it might simply be better not to pass it at all than to take away the penalties.
I don't think there's a problem with like putting signs up and doing things like that. I mean, to me, this goes right back to the skateboarding in public. I don't know, for those of you who are here for that, you know, skateboarding isn't illegal, but we tried to make it illegal here. And so for me, smoking, no, you shouldn't smoke or vape in a city park. We can put up a sign, we can ask people to do it, but I think going around policing, Councilwoman Henderson got to the point for me of where are we actually going to be doing this? Like how is this gonna be used? We do not want to encourage people to enter the criminal justice system in whatever way. So we can absolutely do what the officers currently do for the skateboarding. They just say, hey, you can't skate here. They don't do a fine, not a penalty. So my motion, and I'm not gonna argue about this, my motion is to redo the ordinance, taking out the penalties. There's a second from Mr. Vieira, and I would like to go ahead and call.
Councilman Vieira on the current Clendenin.
Motion and second is on the floor.
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah, so discussion on that. Now question, Councilwoman Hurtak. Would you use the same logic for reinstituting, taking penalties away for like restaurants and airplanes and all the other public spaces? 'Cause
Those aren't public spaces, those are private spaces. Because here's the thing, again, for me, this is an issue of not introducing people to the criminal justice system. That is it, that is all, that is my line.
But it's government that's telling people they can't smoke in a restaurant.
Well, that's state government, that's not us. So I'm talking about things that I can control.
All right.
And if we start with, yes, smoking, you shouldn't do it. You really shouldn't do it in a public park, but I cannot add another layer of government on top of it.
We have a motion and a second. So you're saying signs but no fines?
I love it.
Hey. So I'm gonna have it,
Yeah, signs but no fines. That's what I want the title to be.
wow, I'm in the wrong business. So I'm an avid cigar smoker, and if I see a sign, I just follow the rule. And there's a sign out here. I've never smoked in the parking lot. I've never brought a cigar inside. I don't bring it in the house. I go to a cigar lounge. It's right out here when you walk into the front door. That's it. All it takes is for me to see a sign, and I respect it. If there was a sign that said no roller skating, I wouldn't whatever. I don't really roller skate that much, but I look at the sign. I don't need a penalty. I just, out of respect, say it is what it is.
Mr. Chair, may I add a legal
Yes.
point of clarification, please? McLean Evans. The ordinance as it's written today specifies civil penalty only and only fines. If you remove the specific reference to so no criminal connection there, right? It can't be misinterpreted as a criminal violation. So the portion of code 23.5-5 is just civil violations. If you eliminate that specific language, it becomes more vague and references back to a portion of code that could include a misdemeanor. So you may inadvertently actually be changing the ordinance to include misdemeanors if you include no reference to penalties whatsoever.
Okay, then I would say a warning. So that's gonna be my penalty, is we give a warning. A verbal or a written warning.
A warning of what?
To not do it. Like, again, the whole point is to bring people into the criminal justice system. Civil and criminal, same thing. You're bringing people into the criminal justice system. So the point is just simply give a warning. That is the punishment.
My legal recommendation would be simply not to adopt the ordinance and make a motion to put up signs encouraging people to respect other public members and please not expose them to secondhand smoke.
I like that. So instead, we will take out the ordinance. I rescind my motion.
Mr. Shelby,
That's fine, you rescind the second then?
No, just, yeah.
And that, my suggestion would be then to make a motion to deny this on first reading and give the alternates. That way council is taking action with
All right,
regard
so
to the
make your
ordinance.
So I make I make the motion to rescind the ordinance. Or, I'm sorry, what's the word you chose? Deny. I vote to deny the ordinance.
we have a motion.
But, and then, but he said my first motion, and then I can make the second motion. Yes,
so
yeah,
it's
he
clear.
would, yeah, he likes that because it's clearer.
But from a perspective of the minutes,
Okay.
what you're showing then is you're showing you not just, you're showing you why you are denying
Okay.
it with an alternative.
Okay, I'm denying the ordinance and instead asking staff to create a sign system talking about not smoking in parks.
Do a second.
Second.
Second from Councilman Vieira, yes?
Thank you, sir.
Vieira.
Yes, sir, and I second that, and again, this ordinance, if it was a warning, I would strongly support it. It's, as Councilwoman Hurtak said, it serves as a tool to have more contacts with the criminal justice system where somebody could, to quote Bruce Springsteen, take a wrong turn and just keep going. And I think we have to be careful on that. I do want to say, when somebody shares from the heart on something personal, as Charlie and Miranda did, I appreciate that. I really do, sir, and you know my sentiments and regards. So, but thank you.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yeah, I was just thinking this is really also a marketing issue, which is tied to a budget, where we need to create signs that indicate that parks are smoke-free, and maybe involve community engagement in that, and just really inform our entire community that our parks are smoke-free is what I'm thinking about in the marketing aspect of it. But I definitely can support the motion.
So we have a motion from Councilmember Hurtak, second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion carried with Clendenin and Miranda voting no.
And now your second motion.
That was,
That
yeah,
was
I did.
everything? Okay. All right.
And
Yes.
this is going to save us time, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. I've spoken with Chief Tripp and Ms. Feely on item number 63. And for purposes of time, because we want to end today around 4, and I don't want us to be too compressed, on December 5th, I have a report that I'm going to move at the end of the meeting to written report. And then if I may, I would like to move item number
63.
Yes, sir, 63 to December 5th,
All right,
to save us time.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so
Thank
63
you.
has been continued to December 5th under staff reports, and then you'll make a follow-up motion to make one of them a written, so we don't bend the rules. Okay. Item number 58 and 59. Mr. Bede.
Afternoon, Chair. Afternoon, Council. Vic Bede, Director of Mobility Department, here to address items 58 and 59. A memo to that effect had been submitted by Brad Baird, Deputy Administrator. This item and what's in front of you today is a design task as part of a design-build contract to proceed with the South Howard Flooding Relief Project. I'd like to present a couple of things before we get into the discussion today. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about this project. There's been a lot of concerns. There's been a lot of real anxiety within the community. I'd like to begin by presenting what we presented on November 18th, earlier this week, to the community. And then I'd also like to address some of the concerns that were expressed today by the business community, by the community at large in Parkland Estates and Palmacia Pines and other neighbors as well.
No, you don't.
So, if I may, I'm going to use
How much
the,
time do you need, Mr. Vite?
I need about 7 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. It won't be very long, but I would like to use the Elmo. This is for the South Howard Flooding Relief Project. A real quick description of what we're trying to do. I know we've talked about the watershed. The watershed is from Palmacia Pines down to Bayshore, includes Parkland Estates, New Suburb Beautiful, Bayshore Beautiful. This in particular is what we're trying to do with this project, to increase the drainage capacity of the watershed by 5 times. I know there's been a lot said about how many inches, what year storms, and all of that. But to simplify it, we're expanding the capacity of drainage 5 times. So whether it's storms, whether it's hurricanes, whether it's major events, this project will benefit the watershed and help reduce or eliminate structural flooding, homes and businesses. As part of this project, we've looked at many options, but I'd like to highlight 3 options because these were discussed today. When we look at stormwater projects in general, we look at pipes or culverts. Culverts is a fancy name for a pipe that may be a different shape. That is the preferred option. It's the most resilient, it is the most cost efficient, and it uses gravity. That's what we want to do. That's what we're proposing with this project as well. It's also the most resilient to all sorts of events because ponds may overflow and there's nowhere for the water to go, whereas with culverts, you have an outfall at all times. Ponds are another solution. We've looked at this as well. You're going to need a 25-acre pond to provide the type of drainage capacity, 25 football fields basically. So that's a very expensive proposition in this watershed in particular, and we'll look at that in a second. And then pumps. Pumps are the least resilient solution, usually utilized in a basin that is challenged where you may have to pump something beyond a certain point. It's got higher operational costs relative to the capacity that you can build and requires a lot of preventive maintenance. I think the question of options and how many options we've looked at was discussed as well over the last 9 years now. We've explored over 19 options. And this is a quick summary. By no means do I expect that to be legible or read, but we've looked at 11 different pipe culvert options, different routes. Outside of South Howard, we discussed what the challenges with the other routes were, but the main thing is limited right-of-way, which might force the city to either do eminent domain or get easements from a large number of properties and have infrastructure be located under those properties. It's not a viable option. 3 pipe culvert with pond options were also explored. Earlier, that point was made today that have you explored a combination? We did. It was not the most feasible, the most viable option. 5 pump station with force main options were explored and 2 others as well. Some short-term solutions were mentioned and discussed today in the comments. We are resurfacing Palmacia Pines. We had issued notices to neighbors prior to the storms. The storms have, of course, delayed that. That will include reprofiling of the roads, which will provide that short-term benefit, which was documented in the JMT report. The other item that was documented in the JMT report was the Albany Pond and improving the connectivity there. That's included as part of this project. THEA is contributing $11 million to this project to mitigate some of the expressway's stormwater needs. And that point of connection is the Albany Pond, and that will tie into the culvert system on Howard Avenue. That is what we're proposing, and that is part of this project as well. Just a visual of how big that pond would have to be. It would be located in Parkland Estates, which is the low point. It It would basically take up most of Parkland Estates. And so that would be the 25-acre pond solution. That's a lot of real estate. This is what is in the contract in front of you after extensive engagement. A review of 3 potential route options that connect to South Howard Avenue, leverage the box below the CSX line, leverage the box and outfall at Bayshore so that neither has to be reconstructed and a different route. And these 3 options would be subject to design and discussion, and I'll touch upon that in a second. We believe that this project will mitigate structural flooding that we saw from Milton. That level of intensity, there will still be street flooding, but it will mitigate flooding into people's homes, into people's businesses. This is well considered and well studied. I'm going to touch upon businesses, supporting our businesses on Howard, and a lot of the considerations that we have made towards that, because some of the things that we heard today were that maybe we've not given enough thought to this. Maybe we haven't done as much homework as we need to over the last 7 years across 3 consultant studies and significant consideration. So the team has done a lot of due diligence, and our team is here today. Our chief engineer is here, our stormwater manager, the consultant, as well as the contractor, Kimmins, are here joined by us, along with our administrator, Jim Duncan. I'd like to start by saying on the diligence, this will not be Southeast Seminole Heights. This is not that project. We've learned from that project, this will not be it. We've done a thorough constructability review, and our contractor is available to answer any questions relative to that. Our team has walked the entire corridor, met every single business, talked to them, shared information about the projects. We've had meetings with the Soho Business Alliance, Burns, and other stakeholders as well. And our design criteria packet before the RFQ was issued was developed by experts also. On business deliveries, our parking department works in Soho, downtown, Ybor, South Howard, Hyde Park, everywhere. We are very, very familiar and will be taking every care to ensure that deliveries are made appropriately. Most deliveries happen with a truck on the street and carts that empty or carts that deliver either drinks or food into the restaurants and facilities. That will be managed by our contractor. They've done this before in urban environments. We're aware of it. Through the phasing of the project, there will be impacts and disruptions. We've talked about it. But you're still talking about an 18-wheeler or a box truck or whatever form factor that is, a block or 2 away from the business that is impacted for 5 to 7 weeks. So that is the extent from a delivery standpoint that we anticipate for the most part. And I say for the most part because there are always exceptions. I know Epicurean was mentioned and Burns earlier today. I'd like to highlight that the Epicurean has 2 different entrances. Those entrances are connected on the internal part. Our phasing anticipates to have one of these entrances to the Epicurean available and open to customers and deliveries at all times. It won't be perfect. By no means will this project be perfect. It is disruptive in its nature, given that box culverts have to be built down a narrow space, but that opportunity will be available. On patron access, golf carts are just one option that the contractor will exercise, and any other creative ideas there are. But we will always have sidewalk access available for patrons. For the parking lots for the patrons, most businesses on Howard, most businesses have access from side streets to the parking lots. Some do not, and we will work with them, but this is most businesses along South Howard. And the green is if it has some sort of access, either through an alley or a side street. We will take care of lighting. We will take care of trailblazing and work through that with all of the businesses to make sure patrons know where the businesses are through the construction and they have access to it properly. Construction means will also be modified, and Kimmins can speak to that, to provide faster, shorter segments in the most critical locations. So typically you have staging, you have restoration, and you have active construction going on. That one or two of those elements can be removed in certain critical areas to move through there a little bit faster. So that is available within the contract. There's a significant maintenance of traffic plan, including early works that will resurface side streets, that will trim trees to accommodate for trucks and better access. Solid waste, fire, and police were mentioned. We've coordinated with all of them. These are city departments after all. All of them were present in our February meeting with the Soho Business Alliance and Burns and Epicurean that happened at the Epicurean. So they were there. We will, of course, follow all of the appropriate rules through this construction process as the project moves forward. We heard from servers today. We heard from people in the service industry, and I know some of them are here today. We are very, very sensitive to that also. We understand. By no means do we understand their concerns as much as they do or their business owners do. But we're the same team that through COVID, and that industry faced a lot of challenges through COVID, that shut down streets to expand capacity for restaurants and businesses. We're the same team that came up with creative rules for parklets and sidewalk cafes. Some of those rules that we've extended past COVID and are still to this day available to restaurants. We will work with them with everything in our means. We will support businesses on Howard. We will work on programs like Shop Howard, similar to Shop Gandhi. I've been in touch with Greg Slater, with Thea. They had a very successful program, a community partnership. You heard from community members today, committed to patronizing these businesses as well, working with the Chamber of Commerce, working with city departments, and working with any other institutions to ensure that we can all come together, work together through this important project, through this critical need. In terms of timing, we've heard that the business community has asked for 120 days to coordinate on the design. That is what they want to coordinate on, what other options there are. It'd be great to have the designer on board for the same. That's the task in front of council today, is a design contract. And the reason I say that is we have about 2 years to plan. The design process will take about a year. There is a year of early works as well, which will have a full lane on Howard open. So there's plenty of time to work together and plan this out and understand how we can all help each other to provide this flood mitigation in the area. And on that note, I would like to reiterate that we have done our due diligence. If there were better routes or if there were better options, we don't have any vested interests as public servants not to put those forth. It's in the charter and we take it seriously. Public safety and welfare is what we do. And we're looking at the long term over 3 generations and the needs of 3 generations, balancing them with real challenges with business access. But we've done our homework. We've got a great team on board. They're willing to work with the community on this, and we will work with them. And I'll just end by saying what is in front of you, again, is a design task. You're going to get another bite at the apple in looking at the construction aspect of this. But having our designers on board will allow us to better engage the community, better engage the business community. If they have experts and they have engineers with ideas, it is our designers that ultimately need to work with them to really get us to deliver this project. So I will end with that, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Mr. Bide, the first of the flooded homes that I visited were in Palmacia Pines on Habana. People that are here in the audience, I went into several homes with the drywall cut out and the floor torn out. And again, I've been here my whole life, and I can't remember a time when that area north of Swan flooded. I understand Howard, Swan, area south of there, but these houses have flooded. We walked the neighborhood. This is without any people from the city of Tampa. My legislative aide and I went there after the meeting. And we were talking about the stormwater inlets at one of the one of the intersections. And I'm looking at it, and I can't see where the water would flow to. You talked about repaving and grading. We looked at the stormwater retention pond that was under one of the parking lots. We looked at a dead-end area that was fenced off, and with some of the neighbors, we go, look at this. I mean, it's not even kept up. It's not clean. The water has really it's a design flaw. I look at Parkland, south of Swan and north of Swan as two different entities. Why can't we do immediate short-term fixes to the Palmacia Pines? I had this discussion with the previous mayor. Look, the asphalt is too high. The water can't flow into the storm drains. The storm drains aren't clean. This water goes into a dead end. It's not even connecting to the stormwater pond. To me, not the engineer, we're the finance people at this point, because you're asking us for almost $8 million today. Why can't we immediately address that neighborhood now? It does not. I went over this contract the other day. I went over it again, and I want to ask the question, was Palmacia Pines considered before Milton? Because the contract only talks about south of Swan. The people are here. There's many people from that neighborhood here. It's going to rain again. Right now, the hurricane season is over. It rained a little bit yesterday, and I was terrified going, it's going to rain on Wednesday right before the meeting. It's going to rain on Wednesday. Up all night waiting on this rain. The rainy season is going to start again this summer. This project is not going to start 2, 3, 4 years, whatever. What can we do for them today? I've been in those houses, and if you look at the curbs, their entire life is out, you know. I don't know how much of the debris has been picked up, because I would drive through there at least twice a day until my wife finally said, enough. You're off it's 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. Stop. Because I care. What can we do for that neighborhood now? Because it's going to start raining in June. It's going to start raining in July, and we get those heavy afternoon rains. Regardless of this project, again, I never saw that area flood until Milton. Yes, it was a hurricane, but you know, when people tell me no, when the previous administration told me no, when we passed this original stormwater assessment, it's extremely frustrating. This is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. Everything was no. And I'm not that stupid that I can't figure out common sense going, the water has nowhere to flow to. Parkland Estates is different. It acts as a basin. I saw the videos flowing down Armenia and other streets from Palmacia Pines into Parkland, flooding those. I've been in those houses too. That's another neighborhood, going in twice a day. Do they get their debris picked up? You know, we heard from people today on Howard Avenue about their businesses being affected. I don't know how many employees, 1,000, 1,700, 2,500. I've heard so many numbers. This is a majorly impactful project. I know it's not easy. We talked about 120-day continuance. You say no. If we approve this today, the design build, it goes into that same timeline. You allow the design to happen. But from my understanding, once we approve a design build, and yes, there are other bites at the apple, the ship has sailed. We can't cancel the contract. I mean, I think maybe the mayor can cancel a contract, but it's a point of no return. That's what I'm saying is, you know, you have stormwater engineers, and I respect all of you. You've had multiple opinions, but I remember a story, and I'll close with this. I met a man who had a brain tumor, and he asked me, the reason the conversation came up because he went to a neurosurgeon, last name Maniscalco, and he said, nobody wanted to operate on me. Everybody I went to, every specialist says, there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can do, until Dr. Maniscalco was able to operate, and I'm alive today. And now this has been 20 years, and the man is still alive. He went to the experts, but he got different opinions. What I want to know is what difference does 120 days make on something of this magnitude? You're asking us, could be $65 million total, could be more. Today you're asking for $7.7 million. Why can't we get other opinions? Why can't we address Palmacia Pines right now? I think that's the easiest part of this project.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. I heard three things. Why can't we do something about Palmacia Pines right now? I heard that has Palmacia Pines been considered as part of this project before Milton? And then the third is the 120-day continuance. So I'll start with, has Palmacia Pines been considered before Milton? On the Elmo right now is the first page of the JMT report that shows what the watershed is. This is a gravity system, meaning you've got Palmacia Pines on top, then you've got Parkland Estates, then you've got New Suburb Beautiful, Bayshore Beautiful, and Bayshore. So this is a sheet flow gravity system that has been that way due to the geology and the hydrology of this area. So when you increase the drainage by 5 times from Parkland Estates on down, what it creates is the opportunity that many times over, up to the capacity of that 36-inch pipe on Audubon, for flows from Palmacia into Parkland Estates to the outfall. So there's a direct benefit by doing just that. There is nothing in this contract that precludes us, as part of the design process, from upping the size of that 36-inch pipe to Palmacia Pines as well. So that is part of this also. So Palmacia Pines has been considered from day one. A lot of the initial engagement after the 2015 flooding was done with Parkland Estates, admittedly so, through the planning stages. But this impacts the watershed, and Palmacia Pines is part of the watershed. Our commitment is to address structural flooding in Palmacia Pines and Parkland and the entire watershed for the metrics that we said. The other part of it was, what are the short-term solutions for Palmacia Pines? Why can't we do anything right now? So the JMT report does mention that we need to pave and reprofile the streets. We are going to pave and reprofile the streets in Palmacia Pines. As our in-house paving teams were doing Howard and Armenia, Palmacia Pines is just to the west of that. That's where kind of that watershed begins. We had noticed the communities that we would be paving there, and then we got the storms. So that whole timeline is shifted, but it's shifted by months and not more than that. So we will be out there paving. That will include reprofiling, incorporating some of the JMT report recommendations that channel that water better. As far as the existing system at the AMI pond and its design, the design you mentioned was not right. I would say the design is just antiquated relative to our needs. The design is from decades ago. The pond is a vault built decades ago. Is it sufficient? It's not. That's also on the first page of the JMT report, that for this watershed, the drainage system is not sufficient and the outfall is not sufficient. That's what we're trying to solve for here. That's what we're trying to work towards. And on the 120-day continuance, I didn't refuse or say that we shouldn't do it. What I'm saying is the design is going to take 1 year. There's 1 year to do early works when one full lane on Howard is available as utilities are being relocated, water, wastewater, others. We have that much time, and we're talking about the design, so let's have the designer on board to support these conversations. We're already providing for resources in this contract for exactly that. So another few stakeholders are welcome to this conversation. That's our goal.
So, one last question. If we approve this today, and the design, everything goes on schedule, the project begins at Bay Shore and it goes north.
Correct.
And it takes, let's say it takes 3 years or 4 years, or let's say 3 to 4 years. It doesn't end at Swan until the end of the project, and then it all is completed, correct?
Correct, but I'd like to caveat that because there will be work along Howard Avenue and side streets that happen well before that.
So my
The early
question is,
works.
you mentioned the repaving and grading of Palmacia Pines. When does that take place? When
Right
does that-
now, within months.
Because they're sitting behind you, the
Correct.
people that live there.
Yes.
We want it now. I mean, it's structural, physical, and psychological damage. Every time, I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm not affected by it, but yesterday it was gonna rain, and I said, what's gonna happen now? And thankfully, nothing happened, but the rainy season will be here come this summer. I don't wanna give people false hope and say, well, in 3 to 4 years, after you go through 3 summer storms, maybe, after your house repeatedly floods because everything is no, we can't do this other than pave your road. I don't want to give people false hope, because people come to us looking for help as a city council, and our hands are, I don't want to say tied, but we can't keep saying, well, I mean, they want solutions. They've lost everything or most things, and they're paying a fortune out of pocket. Anyways, I'll just keep talking, and I'll go to other council members. Councilmember Clendenin, you asked to be recognized first, and then whoever else.
Thank you. I appreciate you and everyone else in the city and their responsiveness to this complex issue. Like Chairman Maniscalco, I've also been in these homes, and I've seen the issues that have occurred in both of the neighborhoods that have been discussed. Clearly, this is an issue that is decades in the making, and it's not something that's going to be resolved overnight, in spite of I think people's wishes and desires. And we can point fingers backwards at former leaders and former officials that maybe either didn't have the political courage to stand up and do something, or just for whatever reason it did not happen. So all we can do is deal with the circumstances that we have in front of us today. We have a lot of folks that have been negatively impacted by freshwater flooding in these neighborhoods and others. So we're just talking about this neighborhood today, but there's other areas in the city of Tampa, and Councilman Vera will testify that in his district, a lot of people have suffered in that district as well. Across the entire, I mean, honestly, every one of our council districts have experienced some degree of freshwater flooding, or from devastation to minor. What I'm looking at is, you and I had that conversation about the empty box, so we're voting on an empty box, not knowing necessarily what's inside. So I'd like to give some context. And because, you hear from everybody that stood before us today had, from their perspective and their life experiences and their business experiences, had valid concerns. And it's a shame that it kind of gives this tone of us against them, but really it's everybody coming to the table with their own wants, needs, desires, heartache, financial strains, whether it's personal, because you can't, I have found personally flood insurance does not cover damages, that you think it's going to, and it costs you a lot of money out of pocket, which I'm dealing with myself because I had flood damage. So everybody has their perspectives, and that's what I hope everybody realizes, regardless of what neighborhood you live in, or whether you're a business or a homeowner. The people that are coming before us today all have valid concerns, and they just want to be heard by the same government that they pay taxes to, and we all pay taxes, and we all have responsibility. And I think somebody said, what do you expect out of your government? You want them to provide you clean water, they want you to take the dirty water out of your house, they want your trash picked up, and you want safety and security. And that, all this other stuff we do in the city of Tampa, we shouldn't do any of it until all of that is taken care of. I mean, that's the basic foundation of what government should do. So I circle back to the context I'd like to provide. What I'm looking for in this project is, I think you all and your consultants should come back with proposals on like 3 proposals. One proposal should include a route that does not include Howard Avenue. One proposal should include a route that does not go through Parkland Estates. And one proposal should include a route that uses Swan to reach Howard Avenue. So, and look at those proposals. And I don't believe we've already passed this unanimously, I don't think any of the proposals should include Bristol. Because of the tremendous impact that it would have on Bristol Avenue. Well, this council's already expressed that desire. And I think every proposal that is created, not just because the milling is good and it'll resolve some issues, but the systemic issues that we have, specifically in Palmacia Pines along Azeel and the businesses and the homes that are along that street, we need more of a comprehensive plan. And I think that, and I know it's going to cost more money, and we're going to have to find that money, or we're going to have to bond that money. But I think this proposals the scope of this project has to be expanded so that when we're engineering this very significant mitigation process, that Palmacia Pines is included as equal parts of this equation, of this watershed, of taking this water from these neighborhoods to an outfall. I concur with your assessments about the ponds overflow, potential overflowing and outfall obviously is the most desirable way of shedding water out of here, is getting it someplace where we have an ability to get it off of the ground. So that's what I would like to see, as we frame the context of this approval for design build, that context takes into account those 3 types of equations, that we're not using Bristol, and that that we expand the scope of this project to include Palmacia Pines and being able to get the water out of that neighborhood. Because what I fear is that the infrastructure that we're going to put in place for the Parkland Estates portion that has been conceived, make sure that it's engineered, designed to fit well with taking the water out of Palmacia Pines. And I understand your concept of, okay, you get the water out and you still got someplace to flow, but we still have to make sure that the volume is sufficient to get it all off the land and to where we want it to go. So that's what I would ask for you is,
May I respond?
I would support this process of design build with these caveats.
Mr.
Yeah.
Gide, and then I'll go to Councilmember Carlson.
So, Councilman, point very well taken. I understand what you're saying. We will look at it. We've also heard very clearly from the community's concerns relative to Bristol. I just can't make a commitment until the designers do the design and follow the process of discovery based on facts and evidence, those type of things. But that will be our goal. That is our commitment, is to bring the community together and deliver a solution that works for all, with most considerations being fulfilled. On a couple of things that you mentioned about looking at Swan, Swan connecting to Howard, is that what you were?
Yes.
Okay, got it, perfect. So clarification there, appreciated. Also, I'd like to highlight that the original recommendation for this project was Morrison, but because of grant tree considerations and a short segment, it was then moved to Bristol, but because there are concerns with Bristol, we put all 3 out there and said we'd do the discovery. So your recommendation is very much consistent with that, of looking at all of them. But I want to assure council that we are aware of the community's concerns around Bristol, and if there's any way we can do another route, that will be our goal, but that will have to be a function of the design, of course.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that, because, reference the engineers, we've had this conversation. In making these determinations, engineers come from, I want to get from point A to point B, how am I going to do it? Boom, bulldozer, right? And then, staff comes to it from another type of perspective. And then you have the neighborhood and the businesses, and then you have the politicians. And it's up to the politicians to kind of throw all of those things onto a scale and come up with something that kind of meets everybody's needs. So I get the fact that we want to rely on those consultants and engineers, but we also have to give equal weight to all the other components. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, and I appreciate your kind of unifying message here on that. So.
Councilmember, Mr. Shelby, did you want to go before Councilmember Carlson?
Yes, because it's come up as a result of Councilmember Clendenin's discussion, two people during public comment referenced a prior motion of council. I believe it was made in June. That was a specific official direction of council at that time, and that motion is still out there. So I'm concerned that this needs to be, that motion needs to be addressed before you take up this motion, because I believe they are contrary.
Well, I think that that motion still stands, and that was my reiteration of basically restating it and when I was talking about these issues. Because that motion, that still stands, that's still the will of this council.
If it still stands, then is what's being brought to you then out of order?
So if I could address that, Chair. So I don't believe it is, because what is in front of council right now includes options that are consistent with the motion. The motion was to preclude a certain route, and what is in front of you are options that do that itself.
But that
All
option
I'm
should be on
saying-
there. So let me to give you my take on this, and legal and Mr. Bede, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The staff has come forward with a proposal for design build on this project. Previously, this council passed a motion with guidance reference to the one route, saying against the Bristol route. That still stands. So this request from staff, the proposals they'll come through will not include Bristol.
Is that what my question is? Then I have to review, what does the contract say? What are you actually voting on? Because what you're voting on controls.
The contract has Bristol as a possible something. It's on the
Correct.
map.
It's something to be reviewed. It is not, so the contract right now is a design task. It's not for implementation. So
we would have to So if what you're saying, do we understand, so that contract, Bristol has to be stricken from that contract?
it doesn't need to be, in my opinion.
But that's not what you have in front. Is the contract in front of them?
I'm sorry?
Is the contract in front of them today?
The contract is in front of them today.
Does the contract in
motion-
front of them reflect any reference to Bristol?
It does.
Then what you're voting on includes Bristol.
So I motioned, it was, if we, to pass this, if we make a subsequent motion to ensure that that's stricken from that contract.
We don't get to negotiate contracts at this point. And by the way, the question is, and I guess this maybe is a question for legal, but if you pass this then, and they come back and say, your route is Bristol, then what is your remedy as a council to that?
There is none.
So Mr. Shelby, why wouldn't this council have the authority to put a caveat in the authorization to spend $7.7 million?
Because the charter says that the contract is negotiated by the administration. It is brought to you, and your opportunity is not to renegotiate the contract. You can continue it for them to further discuss it with you, or you can vote it up, or you can vote it down.
But, okay, talk this over with me. So I do have by charter the ability and the authorization to pass these budgetary items. I also have the authority to not fund budgetary items. So I could say I do not want any money of the $7.7 million spent on Bristol.
I think that's too specific as to your authority, frankly.
Does city lawyers, attorneys believe the same thing?
So if my understanding is right, the motion from the last council meeting was to come back with ideas and concepts that preclude Bristol. They weren't in. Yeah, but it
Your
wasn't,
microphone, sir.
so it was a matter of discussion, not a matter of action. What is in front here is a contract with options that also are consistent with that motion, but that motion wasn't an action. It wasn't bring us.
It was an action. A vote of 4 is an action of city council.
Was it voted on?
It was unanimous, as
Yes.
I recall. So I don't have an issue with what council does. I don't have a dog in this fight. My concern is that based on what the direction of council happened, and we could bring up the language, and if the clerk can bring up the language, I know somebody from the public, 2 people put it up today, or raised the issue. My concern from a practical standpoint, if council has taken a policy position, and now something is being brought to you inconsistent with that policy, that in some form or fashion needs to be resolved. And if it means rescinding that motion or amending that motion to include Bristol so the contract can go forward, but if that contract in it makes reference to Bristol, that sounds to me inconsistent with the policy that this council has previously taken by official action under the charter by making that motion. So I just want it resolved one way or the other, either way. I just don't want to say somewhere down the line, well, when you passed this, you overruled your own policy. It has to be knowingly, willingly, and voluntarily done, in my opinion.
Yeah, I still don't understand why I can't, as council, have a stipulation of money. When I'm not negotiating, let's say I'm not negotiating a contract, but I can say I'm not going to fund.
Well, then what's the remedy under the contract if you don't fund it? I don't know what the answer to that is, but certainly there's a company that's relying on a design-build contract that you're approving, and once you approve it, there's certain obligations that the city has. So I don't know what the remedy is. You're asking a question that's beyond my scope based on my knowledge of this project
So is there
and this
a city
contract.
attorney that has the understanding and ability to answer that question?
You can continue and ask for a different contract. They shouldn't have put it in there knowing that we had already passed this.
Wait, are you? Councilmember Carlson.
You want to, I was just responding to that issue.
And asking.
Here we
shall
go.
receive.
Here's the city attorney.
I apologize, I've been stuck on the elevator, so I don't know what the question is.
So,
So,
Let me, unless, Mr. Shelby, would you like to summarize it, or do you want me to?
Yes, I thank you, Madam Clerk, for providing the time from November 7th. The original motion was when? The original motion was made by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Miranda on June 20th, 2024. Mobility staff to provide a written report on using Bristol Avenue for the vaults and to bypass the neighborhood as they work to resolve the flooding issues using commercial corridors, and that council will not vote or fund a plan that places vaults on Bristol Avenue. And that was, there was a verbal report. It was November 7th, continued from September 5th of 2024.
sorry.
Mr. B-Day transmitted background on it, and the memorandum was received and filed, and the motion to receive and file carried unanimously with Miranda and Vieira being absent.
Mr. Shelby, he combined 2 items that week and didn't answer this question. It was by combining 2 items, the other item was answered, but that one was never responded to.
Does this say specifically which route, or can we say that this is still consistent?
Madam
with the
Clerk, are you
contract?
able to
We don't need to design.
print
for
that out to
this.
my, I guess I could print that out.
Which one do you
So this
Just
is
the
what
email itself.
So what do you think?
We'd like to move
Go ahead,
this forward
Councilman
and
Vieira.
say we
I
wanna
think,
do Bristol.
if I may, guys, so my interpretation of this would be, just in 30 seconds, is we made a preference in June that had no binding effect. This wasn't an ordinance. It was a preference at the time. This would be a resolution with more binding effect. I don't want us to get into a rabbit hole just yet on this. I think we ought to look at the larger picture and then center in whenever we take action. I think we're getting into a rabbit hole right now, frankly, and we gotta, we have certain time, and I think we ought to go forward.
And if it's the
in my opinion.
if it's council's wish that we exclude Bristol from consideration right off the bat, the resolution does not say anything specific to that, nor does the contract, is my understanding, so we can proceed with the other 2 options.
Okay, all right, you work it out, and I'll go to Councilmember Carlson.
Sure.
Councilmember Carlson. Yes, Mr. Shelby.
Just one last thing. One way to do this, if council as a body accepts that, all you can do is, you could move to amend that motion, to amend that section, what happened in November. I say a motion of council with a vote of 4 has the effect of a resolution. Having a resolution does not create greater it's formalized, it's in writing, it's a public record, but as an effective, and council all the time takes action by motion only.
Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, I have a lot I want to say, but I want to say a couple things in response to some of the things that have been said, and then maybe in the second round, say a few general things. I think the solution to this is that we ask them to go back and remove any reference to Bristol from the contract, because that was the instruction we had given. They should provide a contract that doesn't include it, and they should have given a report 2 weeks ago on it. In regard to Palmacia Pines, I also went, I don't remember, within a couple days after the storms, and the neighbors.
Yeah, take it outside.
The neighbors, some of whom are here and were here today, were gracious enough to show me their homes and the devastation and how they're renovating. And we also drove around the neighborhood, and this is not a question, I'm just making comments. As I toured the neighborhood, I saw ditches that had not been cleaned out in a long time. I saw debris that was blocking ditches. I saw reservoirs, retention ponds that looked like they had not been maintained. And we saw a pump that I was told by the neighbors was being repaired and that had gone out in some way. And so it appears to me, I've been back through the neighborhood more, it appears to me that there should be instant maintenance. And again, this is not a question, I'm just making a statement. There should be instant maintenance. The neighbors on that day were asking me to make sure that the maintenance occurred. There needs to be instant maintenance there. And one of the culverts or retention ponds is under a parking lot that's privately owned, but there should be some way to clean that one out as well. We have another motion that's going forward to look at short-term solutions, but we have to look at that. It's clear that Palmacia Pines is not in this plan. When I asked Mr. Bide to show me it on the map the other day, it was toward the north of it. Just because it's in the larger stormwater area does not mean that solutions were provided. And again, this is not a question. If Palmacia Pines was meant to be included, the pipe or culverts would have gone up to Palmacia Pines, but they were not. This is what I call afterthought justification, where these excuses are made after the fact. We need solutions for Palmacia Pines, and it's frankly offensive and inhumane to some extent that the people in Palmacia Pines have been told that they had a solution and there really isn't one. Also, Mr. Beatty, you talk about 9 years and other people talk about 10 years and everything. As you testified 2 weeks ago, I learned about this in August a year ago, and I had a neighborhood meeting with you and Mr. Adams and others a couple months later in October. So I have been involved in this for a year. The community thought that the city was going to listen to the concerns and come back and modify the proposal. Frankly, this proposal today, I was blindsided by. I found out about 2 weeks ago. So the administration has decided to push this quickly, and now there's an urgency to get this done. This project has been out there for a long time, as people have testified. This city council, as you testified a couple weeks ago, has never slowed this down. Today, if we vote to slow it down, it'll be the first time city council ever slowed it down. Staff has slowed it down in the past. Former mayors have slowed it down, but this city council has never slowed it down. There are many, many concerns about this project, and one of the concerns, you talk about public input. What you've done is not public input, it's called public information or public education. You're telling the public what you're going to do, and then you listen to what they say, but you don't do anything with it. If you were listening even to us, Bristol would not be included in the contract. Public input is where you really get the public engaged. And this is the issue I have with this. There are maybe 20 neighborhoods that were flooded in South Tampa. I've been to all of them. I've toured them. I've worked with them. I've worked with you, Mr. Bede. The day after the last meeting, you and I were in another neighborhood, and we were collaborating and working together. For some reason, this neighborhood has the most incredible divisiveness that I've ever seen. Yeah, people are angry. They're fighting. They're arguing. Is it somebody in the neighborhood who's pushing it? Is it the administration? I don't know, but what I do know is that this is the only neighborhood that, to my knowledge, that the mayor's political advisor and the mayor's communication advisor have been to. And why is it that the mayor and her staff and everyone didn't handle this in a collaborative way? Why is it that leadership hasn't been shown to bring everybody together? 2 weeks ago, I begged for collaboration. I begged for everybody to come together. The neighbors in all these communities are begging for us all to come together for a solution. And this is a rhetorical question. I'm not asking for an answer. But we need leadership at this point to bring everybody together. I was telling Chief of Staff at the break, if we approve this today, there's going to be a war in South Tampa. And it's not going to be the fault of the city council. It's going to be the fault of the administration for creating and throwing flames on the war. If we say we want a 90 or 120-day delay, there's the people now in Palma Sea Pines and part of Parkland Estates are going to be furious and angry. And either way, what we need to do is find a way to bring the community back together. There should not be divisiveness like this in any neighborhood. This is completely unnecessary. There were lots and lots of neighborhoods that were flooded, and there are different solutions for everyone. We need to work hard to find those solutions and collaborate. And again, I'm not asking questions. I'm not asking for feedback. We just need to work together to find solutions. I think we need to take some more time to make this to work correctly. I've worked on billions of dollars of infrastructure projects before I got on council. I've never seen one so badly handled before. This is not the legitimate process that engineers and planners go through. And you all know, Kimmons knows, because Kimmons handles these projects. You should not have to sign up for millions of dollars of projects before you start doing public engagement. What has happened to date is embarrassing from a city point of view. What we need to do, and I would ask the mayor and her staff, hit the reset button, throw the politics out the door, and let's figure out how to collaborate to find solutions.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Councilmember Villa.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the thoughts of everybody. There's a couple things that I think are clear from the outset, which is there's no easy way out on this. There's no shortcut home at all. And in taking a look at the different factions or sides or interests here, there's no bad guy here. Okay, there's no Rocky and Drago on one side. There's both people who all mean well and who all have very legitimate points. I always say I work as a mediator, and that there's a lot of cases, there's a lot of things in life that are black and white, and then there's a lot of cases and things that are gray where there's a lot of gray. This is clearly a case where there's a lot of gray. And as I'll talk about, this is the kind of situation where when you run for office, it's the kind of decision you have to make where you're going to tick somebody off. You're going to make somebody angry. And maybe even inflict hurt one way or the other in the decision you make, and you have to live with that as an elected official. But I always say, if you're going to tick somebody off, you might as well tick somebody off for doing what you think is the right thing, which is why I always tell people in public office to go with your heart on stuff, because you're going to tick somebody off no matter what. So, before Milton, I had spoken to various interests on this, on both sides of it, and I had my views on it, which I'd express. And Milton, for me, changed my perspective on a lot of things. Y'all have seen me in terms of the way that I almost, just with great vigor in the areas of my district that were flooded. You saw this morning that investigative, the inquiry that I want to do, and that the county commission is moving on. We're moving forward on, moving hard on things like we all have been here in Tampa City Council. Milton, for me, has changed everything. And, my perspective on this is the option of whether through the operation of delay or through any other method of telling the neighborhood here that flooded, right, that we're going to continue to tolerate this in one way or another, right, to me is off the table. It's unacceptable. And this project, whether it's delayed, whether it happens a year from now in terms of the beginning, the design, whether it doesn't have the votes today, whatever, it's gonna eventually happen, and there's gonna be heartache in that transition. There's gonna be challenge in that transition. That's never not gonna happen when it comes to this project. It's a fact that if and again, there's design, there's a lot of engagement in that, et cetera, there will be some heartache and pain suffered throughout Howard. There will be some challenges. There's some things that I think that we're going to talk about that if we do go forward, ultimately, is taking a look at the contract, for example, with the contractor and saying, to the extent we can do this, okay, if it's going to take, just making something up, 60 days, and if you go over 75 days, can we do penalties? Can we do different things like that? We ought to look at that. To make sure, because sometimes
part of the contract.
Yes, sir, and thank you for that. Yes, sir. So that, I'm glad to hear that. But again, I don't want to do anything that sets up benchmarks or additional extensions, right? That moves things further away from relief for this neighborhood. That for me is the narrative that I go on this issue. And again, leaving this neighborhood to continue to be flooded, to me, is just an abdication of what city government is supposed to do. We deal with police, fire, roads, flooding, okay? That's the basics of local government. It's like if you do a Waffle House and you don't do waffles. It's like if you do Mel's hot dogs and you don't got a single hot dog, okay? And if we leave this neighborhood to continue to be flooded, either through operation of delay or anything else, or we kick that can down the road, right? I think we're doing that. I think it's ultimately an abdication. We have to not set goalposts on this that I think are inconsistent with what we're dealing with. We're dealing with design at this point. That's very, very limited. There's a lot of different engagement and movement, et cetera, that can happen during that time. This is the dating stage. You still got to move in together. You still got to get engaged. You still got to get married. Okay? This is, or however you do it, this is that point moving forward for this. We need to have continued engagement, continued community outreach, no matter what happens on this. But again, I gave my word to the neighborhood when I met with them, right, that I would move forward on something without further delay. We need to do something that makes sense for this neighborhood to provide relief. We can be innovative, like we talked about with contracts, with providing assistance, et cetera, to businesses during this time, and we'll certainly have time for that. But again, the buck stops with us. And whether we do nothing and flooding continues to happen, or the aftermath of the financial and emotional devastation associated with the flooding for this neighborhood, the buck's going to stop with us there. And if we do something and it causes some challenges on Howard, the buck will also stop with us. Either way, we're going to get heat. We should all, and I think we all are going to do that regardless of how we vote, take the heat for doing what we think is right. That's what I'm going to do, and I know that's what we're all going to do one way or another. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurtak Miranda.
Thank you. I want to thank the public for all the emails and all the comments today. I thank people for putting the time in. I thank people for writing. I read every email. I understand. I really do appreciate the gravity of this. We are here today because for decades, councils and administrations before us have kicked the can down the road. I mean, Hurricane Milton clearly showed us that the can kicking has to stop. There will never be a good time for this project. The best, and quite frankly, cheapest time for this project was decades ago.
Was when, I'm sorry.
Decades ago. Decades ago, when this was shown to be a problem. I cannot sit here and say that it's okay to spend $20+ million extra to take this off of Howard Avenue. Where the current outfalls already exist, we're doing a lot of money saving doing that. And this is mainly because the money's needed in other areas of the city that receive similar flooding. And of course, everyone looks at Councilman Vieira, but quite frankly, folks in Forest Hills and the university area saw flooding that we never expected. The Parkland Estates and Palmacia Pines are actually very blessed and lucky that this project is already ready to go. Forest Hills and University area will be waiting so much longer simply for a project to begin because we haven't even considered a project there. This project was developed because of the history of flooding in this area. So for me, that is a big part of this as well, is managing our money well, because we need to take them any extra money and go to the rest of the city. This is a part of our city and it's very important, but there are other parts of the city who flooded as well, and we need to use our resources wisely so that we can reach as many parts of the city as possible. There is a cost to doing nothing. The folks who flooded, the businesses as well as the houses during Milton are paying that price right now. I've read the emails, I know you all have, about people who have had to put their life savings because they didn't have flood insurance. We're hearing those stories. Who knows which places will flood in the next storm or the next? As sea level rise happens, as more building occurs, it may not be limited to where it is now. It will expand because it expanded this time. I did vote to not approve a plan that will go down Bristol Avenue. I did that. I own the vote. but I voted before seeing what Milton did to businesses and homes in the area. I walked into the people's houses, I saw their lives on the curbs. Milton changed me. So for me, I am asking the engineers to determine the best route to move the greatest amount of stormwater in the shortest amount of time. I do not want the engineers to consider traffic, utilities, businesses, houses, trees, or anything else. I want them to simply tell me what is the best hydrological and topographical way for water to move to the bay while connecting to our current storm infrastructure. That's all I'm asking. I don't disagree with some of my council members that might, well, but this is the distilled issue right now. How do we move the stormwater best, fastest, to get it to the bay? This project will come back to us after the design phase for approval for a construction phase contract. If the engineers cannot come up here and tell me that they looked at only the best and fastest way to move water, regardless of other variables, I will not vote for moving that contract forward. Along with design, I want Kimmons to come back with a fully developed Shop Howard plan created with input from Howard Avenue businesses, abutting neighborhood groups, city departments, the Soho Business Alliance, and anyone else necessary to help businesses weather this project as smoothly as possible. I want a fully formed plan before we sign the contract. Does not mean the plan cannot be amended as we go, but a fully formed plan executed, explained by Kimmons and their associates. This project has pitted neighbor against neighbor. As with all infrastructure projects, some will be asked to sacrifice more than others. Some will be slowed by traffic and road closures. Some will not be able to access their driveways. Businesses will suffer, but this is a long-term solution to the increased threat of climate change and flooding. How can I vote against a project that will prevent homes and businesses from flooding and catastrophic losses? I am happy to walk the road with every single person. I have experience from all sides of Southeast Seminole Heights Stormwater Project, which is not finished. What I cannot do is kick this any further. So that's.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councilmember Miranda.
Thank you very much. I have some agreement with most of what was said, and some I don't particularly care. However, when you look at Milton, Milton was a lesson changer. It has taught us that the future is coming with these kind of storms. But Milton had help. Had help from Atlanta, and he had 5 inches in between or 5 inches after. You had a bunch of rain even before Milton got here. Now, today we're in this room, maybe there's 70, 80, 100 of us in the room. What would have happened if Milton would have come 20 miles north? I got news for us, we wouldn't be here.
That's right.
So that lesson hasn't been learned much. We would not be here, period. Because the storm surge would have been different. Instead of taking water out, it would have brought water in. The problem with all that is, these outfalls, what do they go to? The bay, am I correct?
Yes.
You can't put them any other way. So what happens when you have a high tide in the bay and you're trying to take the water down south? I'm not an engineer, but the volume of water coming in is 1,200 million times greater than the water going out. When it collides, it's going to come right back where it came from. So we're addressing something that will work for a period of time in history, just like the previous one worked for a previous time in history. However, we don't change how we do things, Milton would not be a lesson learner. It'd be a disaster for all cities. And we haven't addressed that problem. And I'm not trying to address it today. I have enough problems listening to what's happening and compassion and all the feeling that the 7, the 8, the mayor, yourself, everybody here has for each other. But how do we solve this problem without anyone getting hurt, financially or otherwise? Simply, you can't. You can't satisfy both sides. Impossible with what we have to work with, because it does not work without cohesive unit of a neighborhood. And I'm not blaming the neighborhood, I'm blaming the situation that we're in to solve this problem. So until that problem is resolved, you can have all the engineers, 50 drawings, 100 people coming in from both sides, and you're still gonna have what? The same problem. So I'm ready to take something, to do something with it. And you know what, I read this here, and I'm not pro or anti-mayor or anything else. I don't see the mayor's name here. I see Mr. Clendenin and my name here. I see Henderson and her tax name here. But the mayor had nothing to do with this. It was us, the 7 of us. I don't know what she does or doesn't, but when I have a problem, I go see her and I tell her what I like and I don't like. Directly, face to face, uno a uno, with no regrets of who she is. That's how I handle my business. But this has got to come to some resolution between the same 2 parties that are here, or if not, this is gonna be a Houdini of something, how we do this. I'm not afraid to vote one way. I'm not afraid to hurt my reputation. I'm not afraid to say that I'm right and you're wrong. I'm not gonna do that. I just want the problem solved on both sides of the issues. Burns is one of my favorite restaurants, right there in the first row. Every time not me, my expensive neighbors and my friends have parties, I go with them. But it's really inexpensive because you get your soup, your dessert, dessert's upstairs, but you get your soup, your salad, your filet, and your baked potato for the same price. You go somewhere else, it's at least another $15, $20 more. It doesn't make sense for us to continue this any further. If they want to hire their engineer, they're certainly entitled to hire the engineer. If the engineer wants to confront and have a confrontation with not a confrontation, but a meeting of the minds, I don't know what's going to come out. But we have to do something so they can hire their engineer so we can get this thing going one way or the other. We'll be here 3 years, you have 5 Milton, we'll still be talking about the same thing. It ain't going to solve it. We have to come to an end, no matter if they like each other or don't like each other. Let the gentleman, if that's what he wants to do that. We have to come and do something. Time is money on both sides of this issue. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, for the record, Charlie, I've never been to Burns.
Well, I'll take you one day.
Never been to Burns. I've heard about it in the dessert room. I did take the kids on a field trip to Epicurean for hospitality. I don't have the emotional connection outside of it being a community issue that a neighborhood lost a lot and that there is a lot of sacrifice that's going to have to take place. And for me, it's as simple as the request for, item 58. After all of the work that's been put in on behalf of the city, thank you very much. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate your approach to this. For the community, I haven't finished reading all of them. I've been reading emails and listening for a while. I'm still getting through emails, and I appreciate your input as well. For me, it's as simple as this, that we should approve the agreement for the design build initial services for $7.7 million because it gets us started. And so everyone is thinking, what street is it gonna come on, and everyone is like worried about the street choice. And that is fair. And for me, it is the professional approach of the experts whenever they decide, and I think I said this at the last meeting, whatever they decide, I'm going to pay attention to that, and I'm going to do my best to support that, and also look for the underlying underbelly of how do we resolve some of the things that Hertech said that I don't want to repeat, because I appreciate those comments as well. But we have to get started. And getting started is just approving the agreement and going there first. And letting the information come back with the community input, but also the expert opinions about the best, most efficient way to get this done in the shortest amount of time. That I do believe is fair. And I know that someone's gonna get hurt, someone's gonna be upset, because of the inconvenience of what it's gonna put people through. And I understand that. But if we don't get started and someone decides to sue us or get your experts to counter what our experts are saying, it's just going to delay the problem. And I'm going to support approving the agreement for the design bill for $7.729 million. That's what I would like to see so that progress can be made in this area. I have looked at a lot of pictures. One of the things that I appreciate about this particular South Tampa community is you all know how to fight. You have a lot of passion, you have a lot of organization, and I do appreciate that. I really, really, really do. And so with that being said, I would like for us to just move forward with the design and take away the actual thought about what street is it gonna be on right now. We need to get started and let the experts at least present it in that capacity first before it goes into the phase where we actually have to keep approving things. But this is just getting started. We're responsible as a council for what comes after this, after the design build is being presented to us. That's how it works, right, Vic?
Yes.
They're gonna come back to us, and then we get to ask more
Absolutely.
questions like we're doing today. And then you all are gonna fill up upstairs, downstairs, and we're gonna listen to you for 5 hours. So this process, it still has a ways to go, but we have to get started, and that's what I wanna support, is approving the contract for Kimmons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that concludes round one. No, we go again, if you want to go again. I forgot to mention, and I can't believe it slipped my mind, my grandmother's first business was in Palmacia Pines in like 1967 on McDill and Swan, which is now the parking lot to Four Rivers. The building was demolished for the parking lot. And my family background is small business, small scale, not Burns' number of employees, not 50 employees, just family members. Over the years, they've had to deal with all sorts of stuff. My grandfather's been dead for years, but over the years, it's been health issues, COVID, financial crisis, and they were able to manage those things, good or bad, having to lay everybody off because the money just wasn't coming in, but they were able to manage that. In this case, with the Howard Avenue businesses, because we heard a lot of testimony today and gotten a lot of emails, it's larger scale. I wouldn't know how to manage that. It's easy to manage, your mom and your dad and a sibling in a small business, but they have the lives of 200-300 people at an institution. COVID was horrible. My dad told me if you can survive COVID, you can survive everything. The world stopped, and they had to manage through that. They have to manage through a lot of things. This is different because it's blocking access to their business, even if it's done on a block by block basis. It's so impactful that many businesses may not recover. We don't know the financial impact because you have to see how much revenue they generate a day, how many people they employ, if they're working on tips. If business is slow, in college, all my friends worked in restaurants, and it would be the best nights were, I made $100 tonight, and nights that they were so slow they made $10. Maybe they would be able to pay the rent at the end of the month, or their car payment. God forbid they had, car breakdown or something. Even little things can greatly impact a business. Howard Avenue is a very important corridor. It's one of the busiest, most important arteries, business-wise, commercial corridors in the city of Tampa. People come specifically to Tampa for some of the locations there. There was raised about a 120-day continuance. I brought up the man that had the brain tumor that went to all the specialists, all the neurosurgeons, and they told him, we can't do anything for you until somebody said, I'm willing to operate on you, and they saved their life. In this case, I think they're asking for the 120 days just to, before we approve, because it's going to be $65 million, maybe more. I know we're only at 7.7 today. Before we spend this money, let's look at every single option on the table. And as you mentioned, what's 120 days? I asked you about Palmacia Pines, and you said, we're looking at the streets. We're looking at the paving. We're doing those things now regardless. That's one of, a very big concern of mine because, again, the first neighborhood I visited and all those flooded homes and the people that I'm in most communication with just happen to be north of Swan. Before we spend all this money, what is the harm in 120 days? Because this could be the project that fixes everything. Maybe everything is right here, but we have to take into consideration all sides. Council members have mentioned, you know, not everybody's going to be happy. People are going to sue. People are going to fight. The neighborhood. This is the most divisive issue that I've ever seen. At the very least, we should offer the decency to postpone this for 120 days. Let them, I mean, they can come back, all sides, and say, look, there's no other options, we've failed, but at least we tried before we move forward. My concern is we approve this project today. You say there are many bites at the apple, and I believe there are, but once you approve a contract, once you get into the nitty gritty, once the first shovel hits the ground, there's gonna be that excuse of, well, we already started. We've already decided. I went through this contract multiple times, and it's Howard. Again, if I were king for the day and I had a magic wand, I could find another solution. Because again, I mentioned at the last meeting, you know, I don't want to hurt anybody. Someone's going to get hurt in this, but I mean, you have something, I saw something like 1,700 employees could be affected. I think we can do something meaningful. We can address the flooding without causing so much of an impact. Councilman Carlson talks about short-term and long-term solutions. I believe there are things that we can do now in preparation before the rainy season starts. Maintenance has been a big issue. I was there in 2016 to vote for that stormwater assessment. One of the toughest votes I ever had to take, but it provided the funding and the money that we needed to address stormwater and flooding throughout the city. I gave you, with my vote, the opportunity to say, hey, now we have a stormwater maintenance assessment. The money is there. Let's look at every option. What's 120 days if we're doing work in Palmacia Pines? We're looking at other things. So much can be done before we go, what I hope is not the point of no return.
May I please
Yes.
respond to that? What's the point of 120 days? The point of this contract in front of you is so that the city can have the design build team on board to advise us. So the next 120 days that have been asked for, this team can participate with us and engage on these questions. They're being paid to do just that. But what will give us more resources in the next 120 days is to have this team on board to assist us with these conversations. We've hired them to do the design build anyways, so why not have them be participating in these discussions? But if we don't approve the contracts, they're on the sideline. We're having a separate discussion and then bringing in a design builder that has been asked to design and build this solution. And you're absolutely right. Right now, it is Howard, but it's a product of years of looking at it. 3 different consultants. This isn't just city staff. It's 3 different consultants that have looked at it. And the geology and the hydrology of the basin hasn't changed that much between 2017 and now. The issues are the same. And so we feel like we've put the best solution forward. We understand that the business community has engaged a consultant from Orlando to look into this further for the next 120 days. Allow us to have the designer on board to do that and have those conversations with them. The design build team is right here.
I want us to exhaust all options, everybody to exhaust all options before we go past the point of no return. Thank you very much.
And I commit that, yeah.
Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, I just want to make my final comments, and it's not questions, just statements. It's obvious this is going to pass, and I think everybody knows my opposition to this for many, many reasons, which I'll mention here. I just want to explain why I'm voting no. First of all, the divisiveness about the way this whole thing was handled, it's not good. And we talk about, let's just start the design phase. The problem was the way the first year or 2 of this was handled. Had these other consultants had real public input, where you listen to the public and put public factors into it, which every major engineering project in the world handles. Every big project handles listening to the public. In this case, we didn't. We just looked at it and decided for a few reasons that we want this route and this solution. I've talked to several other engineers outside the city, and I get different feedback. The problem is, even in the RFQ, it has one route. We say that there are options, but there's only one route, really. If this project was to do design for all solutions, all opportunities, all routes, I would vote for it in a second because we need solutions. The problem is that the process did not include that. And sure, there were meetings that were held, but Monday was the first real big substantive public meeting where everybody was invited. Councilmember Vieira talks about how we're dating before we get married. The reality here is that we're saying, let's get married, let's get married, let's get married right away. I just met you, but let's get married. And most of the public just found out about this in the last week. Let's get married, and then a year from now, if you don't like us, we can get a divorce. And that's not the way we should handle things. We should do the dating first. Many of you watching or here in the room won't remember a project called Toilet to Tap that this administration presented to us 5 years ago. But they had engineers and studies, and they said, here's the only solution we have. It's an experimental solution from another country, and we'll move forward with this. This is a great thing. We need this. Water quality from other sources isn't good. We're going to run out of water within the next couple years after that by forcing the administration and the engineers and the departments to do alternatives analysis and getting outside opinions and getting Sierra Club and other experts, national and international experts involved. We disproved all of that. And we ended up, city council shot down that project 3 times. We may end up going back to some hybrid version of it, but the point is that this city council has turned down lots of projects that the engineers and the consultants and others have pushed. It turns out the experimental idea was not even a good idea, it didn't even work. But here's my biggest problem with this. We have a duty, we've all visited these neighborhoods, we have a duty to solve their problem. They're not saying protect us 4 years from now, they're saying protect us now. But all the testimony we've heard is that really this is not going to protect anybody for 4 years. Maybe a little bit in the middle, but certainly not even the next year because nothing's going to even hit the ground in the next year. So everybody in Parkland Estates promised you they're going to finish fixing their houses, and next week or next month or next hurricane season it rains and they're going to get flooded again. We're not protecting them at all. If you asked me to protect them, if you could give me a solution today that would protect them from the next rain, I would vote for it in a second. Now, tell me the price of it, I'll vote for it. Give me aqua fences like TGH has. I want to protect their houses. But this is not going to protect them for 3 or 4 years. So the next time they rain, they're going to come say, how come you guys haven't done anything? And the only thing we can say is, well, the experts told us we can't do anything. The experts I talked to say there are lots of things we can do, like removing the concrete out of Fountain Park. Also, we've got email testimony, maps, and other things that show that after it's done, after we spent the 65 or whatever million, it's not going to help in a hurricane. This was designed with old data. There's new data now that shows
It's not true.
it's absolutely true, and I
It's
don't want to
not,
argue.
because we
It
haven't
is
started
absolutely
design.
true, and I don't, just so the public knows, the administration, sometimes when they disagree with something, they ask staff to argue with us. And I'm not asking you to argue, I'm asking you to give you the facts. I've seen the maps. We've had other people look at the maps. We've seen the routes. We've seen the stormwater maps. If you were planning on handling, you said even last week it won't handle 11.5 inches of rain. Milton hits again, and this is done, and it's still going to flood this neighborhood. More than 5.5 inches hit, it's still going to flood both of these neighborhoods. It's our responsibility to find a solution that works. If it costs $100 million and it prevents them from getting flooded, then that's fine. But if we spend $65 million, it doesn't protect them in the next 4 years, and it doesn't protect them afterwards, then we've made a terrible decision. We wasted taxpayer money. It's not helping Palmacia Pines because they really weren't including the plan. There are no short-term plans. The route is set, even though it said it's not. It's using old tech, old data. We could spend a few $100,000 and get a better plan. And most importantly, the county officials said this morning, Councilmember Vieira said, why don't we partner with the county on their analysis? The county official said this morning, you should wait before you spend any money until you get our analysis, because our analysis is going to show what you should do. We need a systemic solution that fixes the problem, not one that just makes people happy that we check the box. Thank you.
May I respond real quick? All I would like to say is we will use the latest data when we begin design. That is when. Plus, sea level rise is required to be considered, which requires the latest data as part of the $10 million grant that we've got from FDEP. And as far as what Mr. Horwardell said from the county this morning, may I give you an opportunity to speak to that, or?
Councilmember
Sure.
Vieira.
Are we going to have a debate, or can we just make our
No,
statements?
this is the final round.
I mean, can we
But
just
this
make our-
is relevant because.
You've
so-
had lots of chance to present your data, and we
So let
gave
me
you full
just
time.
say,
I interrupted you earlier, And I didn't interrupt you earlier in debate with you. I'd appreciate not having a debate now. You presented what you wanted, I presented what I wanted, and let's please move on. You had Monday, I didn't go, so you guys could present whatever you wanted
Thank you very
without
much.
anybody saying I
Thank you
influenced
very
you.
much.
You can say it when it's.
I'd just like to share that after this meeting, we went out with Mr. Horwadell and the county team. Councilman Vieira was there to take a picture with them because he had invited them to speak out here. In front of me and other county staff members, he asked Mr. Horwadell, did you mean the South Howard project when you said that? And he said, no, I did not. And I can attest to that because the South Howard project is in a watershed that is not connected to unincorporated Hillsborough County and related to any of that coordination that we're going to do in any way. So I think the broader point, and I don't mean to speak for him at all, but what Mr. Horwadell was trying to say, the broader point he was trying to make is we need to take a holistic look at this to understand all of the solutions we need. I would separate that from this project because we have taken a holistic look at this watershed and put forth the best possible solution after studied consideration.
Thank you very much. Councilman Miranda, you had your microphone.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to, it'll never get fixed. Back in the 90s, 100%. Back in the 90s, when Greco was mayor, we met in his office downstairs at the other building. We had engineers, it was myself, Greco, the city attorney. We went all over the south area, how can we save it? And the answer was, you gotta put a pipeline 30 miles north, you gotta pump the water up because the water doesn't move north very easy. You gotta build yourself a reservoir about 10 billion gallons, and you gotta fill it. So you drain it up, but where are you gonna get the $6 billion? That was then. That was 30 years ago. So it could be solved. I'm sure you do an engineer can solve it. However, we're not talking about that. We're talking about making a savings of what we have for the next 20 or 30 years. That's what the normal thing is and everything that power plants and all that, they got to regenerate themselves every 20 or 30 years. So does this operation. This is not going to last forever. I know, and I'm telling you the truth. As a pitcher, I never threw a fastball. All the curves, because I didn't have a fastball. But here, I'm not throwing curveballs. I'm throwing fastballs. You can see them coming. So what I'm saying is, this will work. And when you mention toilet to tap, I don't know what the hell it's got to do with stormwater. But I give up. That's number one. Number two, it's incumbent upon all of us, whether I like it or not, to try to fix the best that we can while we're in public service. That's what it's all about. And that's what we're trying to get at. If there can be ramifications so someone may not like it, they surely will. Is there will be something that we work together to solve and minimize things? Yes, we can. So among all those things together, you have to realize that it can be done. And they mentioned the Sierra Club, but I got news for everybody. The Sierra Club in California, okay, theirs. Evidently, they don't talk to each other. So what I'm saying is, what's the beef? Remember the old lady, what's the beef? How can we solve this problem? We can't solve it by saying there is no beef. There's a beef here, and it's going to get better and worse. Better or worse? The neighborhood supports all of us. The attorneys and the individuals like yourself and others are the professionals. We have to listen to you. I base it on everything I hear from both sides, not just one side. Like I said, no curveballs, just straight fastballs. That's it. And I didn't have one, okay?
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Bide, for mentioning that. I inquired on that because when I heard that, I don't like to ask public questions to questions I don't know the answer to, right? It's just whatever. But yeah, I wanted to clarify that because I went, okay, this may change my perspective on this. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Again, I'm going to restate what I said before, which is Milton, for me, and the experience of going to all the homes that I've gone to in South Tampa, North Tampa, Town and Country, et cetera, changed everything for me in terms of my perspective on this and so many other things. This is part of what, and Councilwoman Hertag said it very well, which is this is part of what we're going to eventually want for other communities like those in North Tampa. That's what the county master plan's about, and that we were briefed on this morning in different things. This is the end goal, I guess, if you will, for a lot of it. But this is the beginning. This is the beginning. And if this passes by one vote, by the way, this is a beginning that hangs by one vote. I don't want to say a thread, but one vote. And if things aren't done according to how folks want, then if it passes by one vote, maybe 5-2, 6-1, who knows? But it hangs very carefully. We're a long way from Creed 3. We're at Rocky 1. So this is the beginning, not the end, so to speak. So that's all. And by the way, in terms of short-term solutions, I'm glad to have a discussion on short-term solutions. If there are any, let's get them done immediately. I mean, like immediately. But accomplishing that, we can do a number of things at one time. And I voted for motions in terms of short-term solutions. I've made a few myself, and we'll continue to go down that route. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the Rocky Balboa and Bruce Springsteen references, sir. Thank you. Anybody else?
I shake my head and stand.
Councilmember Henderson. Yes.
If it's council's pleasure, for housekeeping purposes, if it's council's pleasure to move forward with this, a solution would be to address the issue of an inconsistency, to take the motion that was made initially on June 20th, 2024, file number CM 24-6831, to amend that motion and strike the clause that says, and that council will not vote or fund a plan that places said vaults on Bristol Avenue. That would make it consistent with the contract, and that would solve any inconsistencies with council's policy.
Can we hold off on that discussion until we're finished with this discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I thought
Councilmember, we're still in the talking round. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. Vic, I just want to make sure that you've said everything that you want to say. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, ma'am. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Hurtak, you had your microphone on?
I move the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before we vote, I would support a 120-day continuance. Again, I want to exhaust all options before we go beyond the point of no return, because this is a lot of money. And it's not really about the money. It's about the impact. It's about, will it work? How many people will be affected? We've already discussed that through public comment and all the emails, because it's going to affect a lot of people, good and bad. What can we do in the short term? It's always about, since the day I got here, it's all about spend the money, spend the money. It's going to cost millions. What can we do? Give me the shovel. What can I do? No, we can't do that. No, we can't. Everything is no. It's all about spending the taxpayer dollar, and it's always a huge amount. The stormwater assessment was $250 million, which this is part of. But why can't we do things cheaper? Why can't we look at all different solutions? And this is what frustrates me with politicians, me being one, but it's always about everything is expensive. Everything that goes to the government is so expensive, and everything is no, unless we award this contract and we do this. I have serious concerns about this. I want to help the people that were flooded. Milton was horrible. I hope to have never experienced it, and I'm glad that it wasn't a Category 5, because I heard that 2 days before, we're preparing for a Katrina-like situation. And I said, it's over. And luckily we didn't get that. Unfortunately, it's happened in other places. It's devastating. Homes have been ruined. I've been in those homes. People have lost everything. People's life savings have been wiped out. Businesses are going to close. Businesses are going to be affected. I don't know if this is going to work at the end of the day. It's going to be years out. Before we make these decisions, a little bit more time. It's not going to change anything. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but to have all opportunities on the table. What's 120 days? The rainy season doesn't start till the summer. Construction on this isn't going to start until way beyond that if everything goes through. A lot of people are going to be affected, good and bad here. There's a lot at stake here. It's a lot of money. I was looking at the Times editorial. We should take a pause on this. Apparently, some of us agree with, some of us don't, and that's fine. But before we make these big decisions and award these contracts, we need to exhaust all options and make sure that we're doing the right thing. We have a motion and a second. Anybody else have any discussion? Councilmember Clendenin.
Yes. I just want to reiterate what I had previously said, and that's because, again, this is so important to so many elements of this community, that if we pass this resolution today, and I know you and I have had private conversations, that you're gonna take these to the contractors, that we're going to look at these alternate routes, and they're gonna reevaluate them again. We're gonna look at look at a route that doesn't include Howard, look at a proposal that does not go through the historic neighborhood of Parkland Estates. I wanna remind everybody that that's a historic neighborhood. So anything that we do there that impacts a historic neighborhood, it'd be like going through Hyde Park or other historic neighborhoods, things that we hold very dear in the city as historic preservation. You know, so much of what we've done with overlay districts, and I mean, how many rules do we have with the Architectural Review Commission, and how much money does a private sector spend to jump through our hurdles to comply with our rules reference historic districts? And I just want to make sure that we are not, you know, we're taking that gravitas of what that community means to the city of Tampa. So, I mean, I'm not, again, all these things have to weigh, and I know that you and I have had these conversations that you are gonna do that we look at a route that goes down Swan Avenue and goes to Howard. So we have all of those options on the table. I do believe that the council has spoken in reference to Bristol, because I think it's a very unique and very specific want, need, and desire. And I also want to reiterate that I hope that you take, and I hope this council supports it as well, and I believe that they do, that this project, we need to expand the scope of this project to include, to make sure that the Palmacia Pines neighborhood and the adjacent streets is accommodated in this in a meaningful way.
That is our commitment.
Okay.
That nothing in the contract precludes it.
Nothing precludes it, but I just want to make sure as we move
Yes.
forward, that we are willing as a city to expand the scope of this to include, because this neighborhood and these businesses along, you know, these doctors' offices and such, you know, they've suffered a lot of loss too, and I want to make sure that we're taking that into account. So, you know, with that being said, I'm willing to take that leap of faith with you, Mr. Bede, and with the city, of knowing that you're going to take that, you know, if we pass this today, you're going to take all those wants, needs, and desires into account as you move forward with this project. And I look forward to seeing the you know, productive moves, as you know, in the coming months and then the coming years, to resolve this very important issue. So thank you.
Councilmember Henderson Hurtag. Was your mic on first?
Yeah, it was. It was just to your point regarding the 120 days or 4 months. I don't see there being any significant difference between now and 120 days, 4 months from now. I just think we should move forward. So, I just wanted to say I disagree with you, but I wanted to say it nicely and publicly.
Because I'm so nice, and I know. Councilmember Hurtag.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought up the historic neighborhood, because Southeast Seminole Heights Stormwater Project went through a historic neighborhood. We learned some serious lessons from that. So that's really what that's my commitment to the community as a whole, is I went through the Southeast Seminole Heights Stormwater Project from before I was a council member, just as a citizen, helping organize the meetings, you know, joining council and becoming more active. I've toured the site. It was, for people who weren't here the last time I spoke on this, it got so bad that we had to have the contractor here every 2 weeks to tell us about what was going on. So the commitment, we've learned a lot from that. I expect that we will not have that problem of having to bring the contractor up every 2 weeks, but I will be doing, you know, we can do monthly tours, I'll do that. But I definitely want, and I think that's one of the things that when we talk to the contractors, you know, what did we learn from the Southeast Seminole Heights Stormwater Project and going through historic areas? So for me, I have a little more faith in that, because we learned a lot. And here's the thing, that company was coming in front of us every 2 weeks. I don't really hear from them anymore. I don't hear from the community. Things have improved. So we'll keep an eye on it. We have to. That's part of our job. But I just want to say that I do believe that once the project gets started, we have learned enough. And the idea that we're doing all this planning ahead of time, which was not done
Right.
with Southeast Seminole Heights. It kind of was learn as you go, and that was rough.
Councilmember Carlson and then Councilmember Clendenin wanted 10 seconds.
Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Beatty, you're obviously going to have the chance to move forward and keep all the promises that you and your team have made. I'm still going to vote against it for the concerns I mentioned a minute ago, but I would, and you have Kemmons, and Kemmons is a great team. When Kemmons works on something, I never get any complaints at all. And McDill 48 was incredibly fruitful in listening to the public. The community is walking into this with a whole bunch of concerns. I hope that you are able to look at all design solutions, all routes. If you honestly do that and take the community through a process, the goal should be, when you come back, that you get 7 votes and nobody complaining in the public. The goal here has got to be consensus in the community. We've got to all work together to find something that, so I'm against voting for this, but let's not have division when this comes back before us. Let's have unification of the community and work together. Thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin.
I'd written something down I forgot to mention. I just want to say, because I've heard it a couple of times about Milton changing things. I want to scratch my head. How did Milton change something? We've lived in the city of Tampa. We've climate change, rising sea levels. We have, I mean, this is what the day before Milton really isn't any different than the day after Milton. And as government officials, I hope as we move forward, and I know Councilman Hurtak and I are almost simpatico on these issues as far as how we build, how we develop, how we're doing lot splits. I mean, so we are the land use people here. I hope everybody remembers these lessons when we go forth and we start and we deal with these issues as we're developing the city of Tampa, of making sure that we're resilient, making sure that we take these type of issues into account in every decision we make as council in how we're approving these neighborhood PDs. And again, it's not going to get any better. It's just going to get worse.
Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and thank you for that, Councilman Clendenin. What I say is that it changes urgency and, quite frankly, intensity. Tomorrow I'm going to go visit 4 people, all working class people in North Tampa who have lost everything, have no flood insurance, and they don't have much anywhere to go. One fellow's living in a trailer. Saturday I'm going to go visit 3 more. I don't know how many I've visited at their homes. And so it's not in terms of policy, it's in terms of urgency and intensity. That's it. Yeah, it's probably about 10 this weekend, and that's my view.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second, a roll call vote.
We have a point of order. We had this on the resolve first.
You don't, well, my reading of it, if it's council's pleasure not to do that today, I'll bring it back up again when it comes time to vote on a fund that, when it comes back to council. This is not your final opportunity.
Just to clarify, this is for items 58 and 59. Both
Yes.
present.
Yes.
Okay.
You want to take them together? Okay, we have a motion and a second,
All right.
and a roll call vote.
Clendenin,
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Miranda, Carlson, Hurtak,
Yes.
and Maniscalco.
No.
Motion carried with Carlson and Maniscalco voting no.
Thank you very much. All right, item number 60.
Mr.
This
Chairman.
is Mr. Baird, unless there's somebody else.
Can't we just move
Mr.
this?
Chair-
Do we have to
Mr.
talk about
Chairman,
this?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
If we could ask people to be quiet, please,
Yeah.
on the way out,
Should we continue?
if we can. No, this, I believe, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it came to your attention, but I believe there's a gentleman here who's in from out of town on this.
Oh,
And he would like the opportunity to have it heard today, if you can do it briefly. I suspect he's prepared in the back. It's the gentleman in the back. I understand Mr. McCray is here, and as long as we have people moving out quietly, maybe we can have that done.
yeah, let's get it done fast.
All right. Hello, Mr. McCray. Welcome to Tampa City Council.
Good afternoon, Cedric McCray, Interim Community Redevelopment Area Manager, here for item 60 to provide an update and answer any questions that you all have. Representatives from LAM could not be here this afternoon due to some conflicts, and I'm here to just kind of briefly discuss the project and to answer any questions you may have moving forward.
Any questions for Mr. McCray? And there's someone here, you said that was from out of town, or no?
I was not aware of that
Oh,
until
okay,
a few
no, I'm
moments ago.
sorry, I heard it.
Could you
say-
just, I think the the concern in the community is that it's not moving forward, but I think you have an update that it is moving forward. Can
Yes,
you just give
it
us
is scheduled to scheduled to start in January of 2025.
And then how long will it take? Any other data that you can?
No.
Sorry to make you wait so long just to say
No,
that.
no completion date yet anticipated, but yes, work is scheduled to start in January of next year.
What do you mean, sorry, this is the best show in Tampa?
All right, do we have a motion and a second? Motion from Councilman Clendon, second from Councilman Miranda, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
McCray.
Thank you.
Item number 66, there was a request to have somebody here. Staff will be present. I don't know whom from. Hello, Mr. Mulkey. Is it you? Yes, sir. Come on up. And Mr. Brody is here too. Okay, sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Council. Tony Mulkey, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm here to follow up on a motion for some information about the vending and catering at the Tampa River Center and to discuss potential policy updates to that. This was originally scheduled for a workshop in late September that was interrupted by some weather. But just a real brief history on this. The River Center opened in 2018, and we went out with a RFQ to find vendors for catering services there. We emulated the private market and the structure that many other venues used when we were establishing our fees and establishing our approach to having preferred vendors. We went back to the market in 2022, and that resulted in the current list of preferred vendors that expire in April of 2025. With concerns about opportunity and equity and just basic kind of adaptation to the activities and the events that the community wanted, there's been a request to see what we could do to be more inclusive and add some more people, lengthen the bench, if you will. So what I am here to kind of propose, and I'm kind of really curtailing some of the information here, is moving forward, we are not going to go through an RFP process. That locks us in for too long with too few vendors. So we're going to open up the process to allow for year-round approvals of vendors and caterers. So there will be guidelines, of course. They have to meet proper licensing. They would have to go through, agree to the rules of the facility, as well as go through an orientation for the River Center. This will allow people to bring their own vendors in, and we would help guide them through that process. We would try to convey that information very publicly, very transparently, to avoid some of the perceived conflicts and just kind of clunky adaptations as we've grown with the River Center and now kind of understand what those operations and the community's needs are. I'll kind of leave it there to ask questions, but our timeline on this is beginning of January to really start rolling this out, to broadcast it with all the details. There's a few things to still work through, but we're very close. And then be able to bring people into the fold as those other contracts expire. And once they get on that list, as long as they maintain their statuses, they'd be able to stay there and operate.
Councilmember Henderson, this was your original motion. Did you have any questions, or are you satisfied with the report?
No, we had an extensive meeting this week. Mr. Attorney Brody, I am very happy with the end result of what's going to be coming forward, and I don't want to belabor the point. I really, really appreciate it. It provides an opportunity for more people to service JBL.
Councilmember Carlson, Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Councilmember Henderson. This is a great idea, great insight. Thank you to Mr. Mulkey and staff for being flexible on this. This is a great thing for the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for your
Thank you.
patience today. So that concludes that. I don't think there's anything else on the agenda. Can we hold new business until tonight?
Yeah.
What about 68? Did we do 68?
68 was rescheduled. Yeah. All right.
Motion to receive and file?
Motion to receive and file from Councilmember Henderson. Do we have a second?
I do, I've got two, I just needed to.
Okay, all right.
All I needed to do was move the things I said I was gonna move this morning.
Go ahead.
So I'm gonna reschedule two of my in-person staff reports scheduled for December 19th, 2024 to February 20th, 2025. It's staff to work on the city council, with the city council budget analyst to create a 5-minute in-person report to present an overview of the recently completed $45 million Tampa Convention Center renovation project, and staff to present a 5-minute in-person report on an overview of the soon-to-be-completed Lower Peninsula Watershed Plan project.
We have a motion from yes, sir. Wait, Council. Okay, Councilmember Hurtak with the motion, second Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then one more, I just want to present a commendation to the Women's History Committee at the Women's History Month Annual Celebration on March 4th, 2025 at the Tampa History Center.
We have a motion from Councilmember Hurtak, second Councilmember Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else?
Nope.
Councilmember Miranda, do you need to make it right now, or?
Yes, sir, right now, real quick, I would like to make a
Please turn your
motion.
microphone on.
I would like to make the motion to add a biannual capital improvement project report and presentation at workshop meeting February 27th, 2025.
We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Hurtak. All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else, sir? All right, motion to receive and file from Councilmember Henderson, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
We are, we'll be back at 5:01 PM.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a trip, I'll be back in 2 days.